Ladies and gentlemen, let me be blunt. Too many people sabotage their own financial lives without even realizing it. They let envy sneak in, comparing themselves to someone else's success. They let anger fester, lashing out at markets, colleagues, or circumstances beyond their control. And they let ego dictate decisions, thinking they're smarter than the facts, smarter than the numbers, smarter than reality itself. Here's the hard truth. These are not trivial character flaws. They are financial liabilities. They cloud judgment, erode patience, and lead to bad decisions that compound over time, often quietly, often irreversibly. If you can master yourself, if you can avoid the traps of envy, anger, and ego, you've already gained an edge over the vast majority of people who never will. You see, wealth is not just about picking the right stock, the right investment, or the right deal. More often than not, it's about thinking clearly, acting rationally, and resisting impulses that steer you toward ruin. The irony is remarkable. The path to building wealth is less about doing spectacular things and more about avoiding the spectacular mistakes that come from your own mind. And mastering that path is, without question, one of the most underrated financial strategies in existence. Emotional discipline is not some abstract, feel-good concept. It's a concrete, measurable factor in financial success. People often assume that building wealth is primarily about intellect, education, or spotting opportunities others miss. Those things matter, sure, but if you don't have control over your own mind, all the knowledge in the world will fail you. The human brain is wired to react emotionally. Fear, greed, envy, and pride all lurk beneath the surface, and in finance, as in life, those reactions are costly. When markets move, when investments falter, when someone else achieves success that seems larger or faster than your own, it is incredibly easy to respond emotionally rather than rationally. And once that emotional response takes hold, it triggers a cascade of poor decisions. People buy high out of greed, sell low out of fear, or make reckless gambles because their ego refuses to accept that they were wrong. Emotional discipline is the buffer that prevents those impulses from translating into financial loss. Consider patience, which is one of the simplest but most overlooked aspects of emotional control. Successful investors do not react to every market twitch or headline. They do not allow temporary setbacks to dictate permanent actions. Instead, they assess the situation rationally, look at the underlying facts, and determine if the fundamentals have changed. That requires a calm mind, one that does not panic or become defensive when reality deviates from expectation. Emotional discipline trains a person to accept that volatility is inevitable, that luck is unpredictable, and that no one can control everything. By cultivating this kind of mindset, one creates space to make decisions based on logic and analysis rather than knee-jerk reactions. Now, consider envy. It's a subtle form of emotional sabotage that silently erodes financial judgment. When you envy someone else's success, you are no longer focused on your own plan or your own position. Your attention is diverted, your thinking clouded, and you start chasing returns or strategies that are not aligned with your unique situation. That distraction can be financially catastrophic because money doesn't respond to emotion. It responds to correct decisions made consistently over time. Emotional discipline allows you to notice envy, acknowledge it, and then redirect your attention back to what you can control, where you can act rationally, and where your decisions have measurable impact. Anger and ego function in similar ways. Anger is often reactionary. It makes you want to prove someone wrong or recoup losses quickly, which almost always leads to overtrading or overcommitting. Ego convinces you that you are smarter than the data, that your instinct trumps evidence, that you are above ordinary rules. Both of these emotions, unchecked, are guaranteed wealth destroyers. Emotional discipline means recognizing these impulses when they arise, understanding that acting on them will likely worsen your situation, and resisting the urge to do so. Ultimately, emotional discipline is not about being stoic or robotic. It's about building a framework in your mind where decisions are driven by facts, probability, and reason rather than feelings that come and go with the latest news or social comparison. It is the difference between reacting to circumstances and shaping them intelligently. Those who master their emotions consistently find themselves in a position to take advantage of opportunities that others miss, avoid mistakes that others make, and stay the course when everyone else is panicking because their inner state provides stability and clarity. Envy, anger, and ego are not just unpleasant emotions. They are silent financial drains, quietly eroding wealth while masquerading as motivation or ambition. Most people underestimate just how destructive these impulses can be. Envy is particularly insidious because it disguises itself as aspiration. You see someone else succeed, and your first thought might be, "I want that too," which sounds harmless, even virtuous. But the problem is that envy shifts your focus outward rather than inward. It makes you compare your journey to someone else's rather than evaluating your own opportunities and decisions. When you chase someone else's path without considering your own context, your choices are reactive instead of proactive. You buy assets or pursue ventures because others are doing it, not because the fundamentals make sense. That's how envy transforms into a financial liability. People make decisions based on the illusion of what should be happening instead of the reality of what actually makes sense, and over time those decisions accumulate into significant losses. Anger is equally hazardous and often far more visible. It arises when expectations collide with reality, when investments falter, when colleagues undermine you, or when circumstances appear unfair. Anger demands action, but rarely the right kind of action. When you act out of anger, you prioritize immediate gratification or revenge over long-term strategy. You make trades, investments, or business moves designed to soothe a bruised ego rather than maximize returns. And markets, businesses, and financial systems do not care about your emotional state. They operate on logic, trends, and probabilities. Acting in anger almost always means acting against reality, which is a recipe for repeated mistakes. People think of anger as a spur to action, but in the financial world it is a poison that clouds judgment, creates tunnel vision, and forces impulsive choices that compound over time. Ego is the master of these three because it convinces you that your instincts are infallible, that your understanding surpasses evidence, and that your position is unassailable. The ego whispers, "You can handle this," even when the facts suggest otherwise, and others are wrong, and you're right, and before you know it, you are over-leveraged, overconfident, and exposed to risks you didn't fully calculate. The danger of ego is that it creates blind spots. It masks vulnerability and blinds you to potential pitfalls. People with unchecked egos often ignore advice, dismiss warnings, and continue down paths long after the data suggests they should pivot. In finance, this is catastrophic. Markets punish overconfidence more reliably than they reward brilliance. And the difference between success and failure is often just the humility to recognize limitations and the courage to act within them. When combined, envy, anger, and ego form a trifecta of self-sabotage. They distort perception, encourage poor timing, and foster decisions that are emotionally satisfying in the moment, but financially destructive over time. The truly wealthy, or those who achieve sustained financial success, understand this intuitively. They know that avoiding these emotions is not a moral exercise, it is a strategy. By minimizing envy, you focus on your unique strengths and opportunities. By controlling anger, you maintain clarity and patience under pressure. By suppressing ego, you remain humble enough to learn from mistakes, admit when you're wrong, and act on reality rather than fantasy. In practice, this means constantly monitoring your own reactions, reflecting on the source of your impulses, and deliberately choosing thought processes that serve rational, long-term objectives rather than immediate emotional satisfaction. Wealth accumulates quietly and steadily for those who are disciplined in this way, because they avoid the errors that destroy capital and miss opportunities. And the beauty of this strategy is that it is universally accessible No one is too young, too inexperienced, or too small to benefit from mastering these emotions. It is entirely under your control, yet few ever take it seriously enough to do so. Avoiding destructive emotions creates clarity in decision-making, and clarity in finance is more valuable than any insider tip or market prediction. Most people fail to recognize that the biggest obstacle to smart financial choices isn't a lack of knowledge. It's the fog of emotion that clouds judgment. When envy, anger, or ego enters the equation, the mind begins to filter reality through distorted lenses. You stop seeing the facts as they are and start seeing them as you wish them to be, or as your emotions dictate. That distortion leads to impulsive decisions, miscalculations of risk, and opportunities that are either overvalued or ignored entirely. Clarity, on the other hand, is a rare and powerful commodity. It allows you to see markets, investments, and opportunities as they actually are, rather than as your emotional state tells you they should be. The clearer your thinking, the better your decisions. And better decisions compound wealth over time far more effectively than luck or brute force ever could. Think about it in practical terms. When someone acts out of anger, their judgment narrows. They see the immediate grievance or frustration and feel compelled to respond, often aggressively. They make moves to win in the short term rather than acting in a way that benefits them over the long haul. When someone is envious, they lose sight of their own unique circumstances. They chase returns that aren't suitable for their skill set, risk tolerance, or resources, believing that mimicking someone else will produce the same results. And when ego dominates, the mind stops evaluating facts objectively. You convince yourself that your strategy is superior, your timing impeccable, and your information complete, even when evidence to the contrary is right in front of you. All of these emotional distortions cloud clarity, and in financial matters, a lack of clarity is equivalent to walking through a minefield blindfolded. The odds of misstep are extremely high, and the consequences compound quickly. Avoiding these destructive emotions doesn't mean suppressing thought or abandoning ambition. It means cultivating an internal environment where your mind can operate free from distortions. It means recognizing when envy, anger, or ego is influencing your decisions and deliberately choosing to prioritize facts, probability, and rational analysis over fleeting emotional impulses. This clarity gives you the ability to separate signal from noise. It allows you to see where opportunities truly exist, what risks are manageable, and where caution is warranted. People who operate without this clarity tend to overreact to volatility, misread trends, and overestimate their own understanding of complex systems. Those who cultivate it, however, make decisions that are proportionate, informed, and consistently aligned with long-term goals. There's also a compounding effect to clarity itself. The more you practice objective thinking, the easier it becomes to identify when emotions are creeping in. Over time, avoiding destructive emotions becomes a habit, almost a reflex. Instead of reacting impulsively, you pause, evaluate, and act with intentionality. Your mind, once clouded by comparison, frustration, or pride, begins to operate like a finely tuned instrument, capable of identifying opportunities that others overlook and avoiding risks that others misjudge. Financially, this is invaluable because the difference between success and failure often lies not in extraordinary gains, but in avoiding catastrophic losses. Furthermore, clarity has social and strategic advantages. It enables you to negotiate effectively, to assess partners or competitors accurately, and to allocate resources intelligently. When your decisions are grounded in rational evaluation rather than emotional reactivity, you earn credibility and respect, which in turn creates better opportunities and alliances. In essence, avoiding destructive emotions isn't just about personal discipline. It directly enhances the quality of every interaction, every choice, and every strategy you execute in the financial realm. Long-term success is built on patience, rationality, and humility, and yet it remains one of the most overlooked principles in finance. People are often seduced by the illusion of speed. thinking that the fastest path, the flashiest deal, or the highest return in the shortest time is the measure of success. But the reality is almost always the opposite. Sustainable financial achievement is not about acting on every opportunity. It is about waiting for the right opportunities, assessing them carefully, and executing with discipline. Patience allows you to resist the temptation to chase fleeting trends or to make decisions under pressure. Rationality ensures that those decisions are grounded in facts, data, and probability rather than emotion or wishful thinking. Humility protects you from overestimating your own abilities and underestimating risks, which is where most people lose money more than anything else. Together, these three qualities create a framework for decision-making that consistently produces results over time, even if they appear slow or unremarkable in the short term. Patience is the first pillar, and it is far more powerful than people give it credit for. It's the ability to endure temporary setbacks, to wait for favorable conditions, and to resist the impulse to act simply because you feel like you should. The markets, businesses, and economies are full of noise, and reacting to every movement leads to poor timing, unnecessary risk, and costly mistakes. Those who succeed in the long run understand that compounding, whether in investments, relationships, or skills, is a slow, steady process that requires patience. Every rash decision, every impulse trade, and every emotionally driven move interrupts that compounding, eroding potential gains. Patience is not passive. It is an active discipline, a conscious choice to align action with long-term strategy rather than short-term gratification. Rationality is the second pillar, and it is inseparable from patience. Rationality means evaluating situations objectively, weighing probabilities, and understanding both upside and downside. It requires a mind trained to look at evidence without distortion, to separate facts from interpretation, and to make decisions that maximize expected value over time. Rational thinking doesn't guarantee success on every single decision, but it ensures that your overall approach is sound and that cumulatively your results improve steadily. People who lack rationality tend to follow fads, listen to unreliable advice, or let fear and greed dictate their choices. Rationality combined with patience creates a disciplined approach that allows for compounding of advantages, avoidance of catastrophic errors, and the ability to exploit opportunities when they genuinely present themselves. Humility is the third pillar, and it is perhaps the most underrated of all. Humility allows you to acknowledge what you don't know, to accept feedback, and to adapt when circumstances change. Ego and pride, by contrast, make you resistant to learning, blind you to mistakes, and encourage overconfidence. Humility keeps you grounded, ensures you respect probabilities, and helps you recognize that no matter how capable you are, luck and uncertainty play a role. Those who combine humility with patience and rationality rarely make irreversible errors, and when mistakes do occur, they recover more quickly because they are willing to adjust course rather than double down out of pride. When patience, rationality, and humility converge, they form a strategic advantage that is rarely recognized but universally effective. It allows you to act deliberately, to maintain focus amid distraction, and to avoid the traps that consume the majority of people. The truth is, financial markets and opportunities are real. Why fair, and they punish impulsive, pride-driven behavior relentlessly. Those who succeed consistently do so not because they are extraordinary geniuses or because they strike lightning, but because they cultivate the internal disciplines that allow them to think clearly, act prudently, and endure over time. Success, in this sense, is not dramatic. It is steady, incremental, and almost invisible day to day, but devastatingly effective over years and decades.